Hey, it's Jeff. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be repotting a few plants, not because I particularly want to, but I had a situation with a couple plants over the weekend where they fell over and yeah, dirt everywhere. So it's definitely time to repot those. I've been putting it off for a little while. So I kind of gathered a few plants, one of them being this Hoya Waitii. It's absolutely massive and it's in a tiny pot, so I'm going to upsize this one slightly just because this is another plant that is really top heavy, so it needs a little more stability, plus it needs a little bit more of a larger pot. So yeah, I have a few other plants. I have a ficus plant, peperomia, and the Hoya plant here, so let's get started. Just want to quickly show what I'm using for my Hoyas. This is Promix Premium Tropical Plant Mix, and I'm also adding in some perlite. This is the brand that I use because it's got some really large chunky bits in there. It's a Dutch Treat 10-liter perlite. This particular Hoya probably has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, half a dozen flowers right now. Only one of them's opened up, and I'll insert some pictures here. They're absolutely gorgeous. This one constantly pushes out flowers for me, and I attribute that to the smaller pot. Hoyas like to be snug in these smaller pots, so I'm just upsizing just slightly. I don't want to go anything too large with Hoya in particular because they like their small little pots. And this one's in really high light, so that kind of stresses out a little bit. It's got these nice little kind of purplish red margins on it. So it's a nice sun-stressed plant. And then another little tip, I guess, for getting flowers. If you say water maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, just maybe cut that back a little bit more, just to stress the plant out a little bit. Maybe put it in a little bit higher light as well. And I found that is how you get Hoya flowers. It's not instantly, but it does obviously take some time. But stress the plant out and it should flower a little bit sooner. This pot is really loose already, so I just simply slide it off, and I'm just going to check out the roots here first, make sure it's not root bound. I'm going to try and flip it over just to show you the soil consistency that I have it in right now. The roots are looking really good. There's no root rot or anything like that. Lots of roots, so it definitely needs to be repotted. It's not root bound yet. And I'll put this down without damaging any of these flowers. And I found a terracotta pot, like I said, that's just slightly larger than this one. I can actually probably fit in this one easily. So just a slight upsize. The reason why I'm using terracotta is because it's really porous. It evaporates soil moisture lower in the pot, but it's also much heavier than this little plastic nursery pot. So I have this one on my little piano window up above the couch, and it has fallen a couple times, I think. All my Hoyas have. So I want a little bit more stability with this larger pot. I don't know if you can see it here, but there is enough space for the roots to spread out a little bit further. I think the depth of the pot is exactly the same, but it has a little bit more room on the sides. So this is going to be difficult because this Hoya is thick. I don't know how I'm going to get the soil. Maybe I need a spoon. I can't find my spoon, but I found a little mini shovel, and I can't remember what these came with. But I'm just going to scoop in soil along the sides. This might take a while, so I'm not going to bore you with me scooping in soil with a mini shovel. This is how prepared I am for my videos, folks. There's no planning. I basically just walk around my house and I say, hey, that doesn't look good. I should probably do something about that, and then I'll just make a video. So there is minimal planning for my videos. There's a few Hoyas that can tolerate those really bright, harsh, like mid to afternoon sun, and this is one of them. It absolutely loves it, and it's constantly flowering. Yeah, ooh, these flowers smell very sweet. There's some Hoyas that their fragrance is only, I guess, prevalent at night. I recently did a video on my Hoya pupa calyx, and that really doesn't have any smell during the day, but at night it is so strong. This one has, it's a light fragrance, but it's very sweet. Oh, it smells so good. Okay, so yeah, there. This is finished, looks like with minimal damage. And it's in a much better pot. I watered this plant yesterday, so I'm not going to give it any water today just because I don't want it to get root rot. This next one is the Ficus Elastica Taniki, or Tanica, however you pronounce it. This one was part of my Instagram stories where I was cleaning my window and I just like grazed the top, and you can see just how like wobbly it is. I just grazed the top of the leaf with my arm and it fell over. There was dirt everywhere. So this was the plant that I guess spurred the repotting video, and it's barely even in the pot anymore. It's grown quite a bit in the last maybe 6 months, maybe 3 months, something like that. So it's definitely needing a repot as it's in this little nursery pot. So yeah, I'm going to put it in something a little bit larger. Again, I'm using a terracotta. Same thing with the Hoya. What's going on here? I got a root at the top. So I'm going to have to bury that a little bit more. Same thing with the Hoya. Any ficus plant, whether it's the Ficus Elastica, the fiddle leaf fig, they need a really good draining soil. So most times I will use I'll still use the tropical plant mix, but I'll use 50% soil, 50% perlite. They like to be watered, but they don't like sitting in any soggy soil. So as you can see, they have very fine roots. That's why you want a really well draining soil. So I'm actually going to add a little bit more perlite to this mix, and then we'll pot it up here. So I'm just going to add a little bit more perlite. Okay, I'm just going to mix this in a bit more here, and then I'll show you what the consistency, I don't know if I can get it up there or not, what the consistency looks like. Something like that. You can see a lot of perlite. Having the right type of soil for a specific plant is almost as important as giving your plant enough sunlight. Some plants require more light than others. This is a highlight plant and it needs a well-draining soil. If you put this just in a regular potting mix with, it's more of like a heavy peat-based soil, it's gonna rot. Like same with succulents. If you put a succulent in just a regular potting soil, it's not going to survive for very long. It might survive for a few months or so, but the second you give it a little bit too much water, it's going to hold on to that moisture and it's going to rot. So you can see the, I guess, root ball here is fairly small, and I'm going to have to add some soil in the bottom. Just pack that down a little bit, and I said I'm going to seat this a little bit lower in the pot just because there is some roots popping up the top of the soil. I should also mention that a lot of plants can tolerate smaller pots, and you can see this one has been doing really good. It's not dropping any leaves, it's not losing any leaves, they're not turning yellow, but once you start to notice a little bit changes in the plant, like if you see some roots poking out the bottom, if you're having to water it more than you normally would and it's still not looking great, like you're getting some yellow leaves, take it out of the pot, look at the roots. If they're encircling, then it's definitely root bound. Pot it up into something larger. If something has changed with the plant, if you're watering it more, like I said, then just investigate a little bit further, and it might just need to be repotted or upsized. I have a couple of videos on root pruning as well. If you have a plant that you want to remain in the same size pot, there's a few areas in my house where I just can't accommodate anything larger than what it's currently in. So once it starts to grow or outgrow the pot, then I will do a root prune on that, and a bit of a pruning as well to the plant. Then that just helps control the size of the plant, and you can keep it in that same sized pot. This plant will definitely be getting some water right now. The soil was absolutely bone dry. The leaves feel pretty thin. That's how I determine whether my plants need to be watered or not, is from just touching the leaves. These ones, they're not like thick, like succulent type, but it doesn't feel right. So once you get used to the way a well-watered plant leaf feels, then you'll know for next time. The soil was really dry and the leaves are really thin, so this one is going to get a good soaking. So I'm just going to pack this down, and everything is nice and sturdy. This should not fall over anymore. Okay, I got another Ficus Elastica burgundy over here that's gotten quite tall. It's in a small pot as well, so I'm going to be upsizing that pot, and I'll be giving them both some water. Okay, here is the burgundy. This thing's looking a little bit droopy. The soil is dry. This thing actually fell over yesterday as well, and it's just been laying on the ground kind of ever since. So yeah, really floppy. And this is the pot. Here, I'll just lay this down. Whoops. Without breaking any leaves. Whenever you upsize a pot, you don't want to go anything too large. So basically one size larger. And you can see this is probably a 4-inch and this is probably like a 6-inch, 5 or 6-inch pot. So only slightly larger. Otherwise, if you go too big, then there's going to be too much soil moisture remaining in the pot, and that can lead to root rot as well. So only go one size larger. If you don't have one size larger, then go buy a pot. I buy all these at the dollar store, and these are actually pots that have had other plants in them before. You can see it's kind of stained and stuff, but I have cleaned them thoroughly and rinsed them, so I like to reuse terracotta. Okay, again, just sizing it up. I'm using the exact same soil mixture. Tons of perlite. Just going to add some soil in the bottom here. I do get the occasional comment on, I think a lot of people have problems with these ficus plants for one reason in particular. They don't give them enough light. These are high light plants, so I have mine probably about 3 feet back from my south-facing window, and they can tolerate, as long as they've been acclimated to a high light location, they can tolerate direct sunlight. But if you have it in lower light and you just throw it in bright sun, you're definitely going to scorch the leaves. So just be careful of that. Just slowly transition it to a high light location. Even a grow light, like they will do really well underneath a grow light. I think I have 4 different varieties of Ficus Elastica, and I love them. They're so easy to grow, easy to propagate. They just add a nice tropical feel. I have 4 or 5 actually. I have the Robusta, the Burgundy, the Taniki, and the Melanie. This little one right here is my Peperomia Hope that I started from single leaf propagations from probably like a 1.5 years ago. Obviously you can see it's doing well. So it's in a small terracotta pot, and I just realized it's got a little bit of a crack on the back. So again, I'm going to take it out of this pot and upsize it into something a little bit larger. The reason why I'm upsizing this one, ooh, I just realized this stem is cracked. I noticed some of the leaves are a little bit wrinkly. I don't know if you can see it on this or not, but some of the leaves were starting to look pretty wrinkly. I'm having to water it a little bit more than I normally would, so I'm going to take it out of the pot and check out the roots. Normally peperomias aren't like root-bound plants. They have fairly like shallow, small, thin roots, but just curious to see what this is looking like. And you can see, okay, yeah, it's got some roots. It's not root bound, but you can see all the original leaves in the pot here. So those are all the original ones where new stems have popped out or formed from them. So I just put them basically in like a small little rosette pattern. You can take a single leaf like this. It just fell off. And in a pot of soil, I just added them along the top in kind of a circular rosette type pattern, and it started to grow into this pretty cool looking plant. Now you can see right here, this stem actually snapped. So I'm going to get my pruning shears. Actually, I'm just going to pinch it. And I can propagate this again, and I'll show you how in a second here. So here's the original pot that I potted it up in, and here's the next size up. So I've added a little bit more soil into the tarp thing here, and I'm actually using a cactus succulent mix for this. I find that peperomias in particular are really susceptible to root rot, especially if you water from the top down. Most times, like 95% of the time, I will bottom water peperomias just because they have very thin, fleshy stems. I find those stems will rot if there is any soil moisture like on top of the soil for any length of time. I don't know why that is, but if you're having problems with peperomias, bottom water, and that should solve the rotting issue. Just going to pack that down, place that at relatively the same depth, and just dump in the soil. I'm just actually going to add it on top and then just kind of shake it down. This particular peperomia is very succulent-like. They have very thick succulent leaves. So I guess you could classify it as a semi-succulent. I don't water it all that much, but like I said, I've noticed that some of the leaves are looking a bit more on the dehydrated side, a little bit wrinkly. So it's time to upsize it, and I think this is a perfect size pot. It looked pretty dry as well, so I'm going to be watering this one. I'll do it at the end of the video, and I'll show you how I bottom water these. Propagating peperomias are super easy. You can do it by stem cuttings or you can do it by single leaf. I'm just going to cut these little leaves off. I like to keep the little stem, the little petiole on the leaf, and then I just stick it right in the pot like that, and that will in time grow its own new vine. So that's how you can do peperomia propagation. You can also do it by stem. So if you cut off a stem like this and just stick it in the soil, I'm going to do it right beside it. Sometimes it won't. Not all propagations are successful, so if you have a couple leaves or stems die back, then not to worry. I've had really good success with these in soil. You can do it in water, but I find just like succulents, they have a little bit more of a tougher transition when you go from water to soil. So I like to propagate my succulents and peperomias directly in soil. And I'm just going around the pot and just sticking these leaves in. You don't have to bury it, but just so that the little portion of the petiole is touching the soil, it will start to root on its own. I'm going to have to do this last one here, this large Dieffenbachia. Look at this leaf. Gorgeous. I'm going to have to do this one from back here because if I sat back there, there's no way you could see me through the entire repotting process. Here is the little stem propagations that I've taken off of this plant. When I first bought this, I actually got it off Facebook Marketplace. It was really like long and leggy, so I chopped up the stem and I now have these two little propagations. They've gotten some growth off of the side. So I'm going to place them back in the pot so that eventually it will grow into a nice full pot, so it'll fill out the bottom of this one a little bit more. It's actually getting a yellow leaf just on the back side, and you can see it's leaning a little bit to one side. So this one's getting a little bit top heavy as well. Whenever you're doing any propagations or anything with Dieffenbachias, just make sure that you wear gloves, like if you're taking off the leaves or if you're cutting up the stem, just because the sap can be a bit of an irritant to some people. Yeah, and of course, don't touch your mouth or eyes or anything like that. It's actually quite toxic to humans and pets, so just make sure if you're really cautious, wear eyewear and gloves. But yeah, otherwise, if you're not dealing with any like broken branches or stems, then you should typically be fine, but take the necessary precautions. Okay, I'm just going to take this one out of the pot here first. Just loosen it up a little bit just to kind of see what the roots on these guys are looking like. Okay, so it doesn't, okay. That is actually quite surprising. I thought there'd be more roots to this than there is. So, okay, that should be an easy repot. And same with this one here too. Oh, it's actually got more roots. This is more of what I was expecting. So, not much, more roots. And there's like pretty well the same size. This one's maybe slightly larger, but that's actually pretty surprising. This one might be a little bit harder to keep out of frame. I'm going to do my best to make sure the camera view is not blocked. I watered this one yesterday. Okay, so there's better roots on this one. This is, yeah, that's root bound. So that's why this leaf was turning yellow. The plant or the roots were starting to encircle the bottom of the pot here. So that's just not, the plant's not getting enough moisture from the amount of soil that it was currently in. So I'm just going to lay this down. And I'm going to try something out here. I have one of my other tools, the little rake. So I'm going to use it as a little root rake. See if I can. Okay, well, okay, that didn't work. It literally fell apart. I'm just focusing on these larger roots. Okay, this one, where did this one go? Up here. There. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do for disturbing the roots, just so they're not encircling on the bottom. There's one more right here that I want to loosen up. There. Okay, that's good. Same with this one. I'm going to add a little bit of soil at the bottom. I'm going to remove that leaf afterwards. I just don't want to damage any of the other ones. I'm still using the tropical plant mix. It's got a little bit of that cactus mix. And I'm actually going to add in just a little bit of this orchid bark too, just so it's a nice airy mixture. Take some of that out. You see it's got some soil at the bottom there. Now I'm going to seat that right there, and I'm going to see if I can sneak these guys in. Probably not. It's going to loosen up the soil at the sides. Maybe I can sneak this in. I don't know. You know what? Actually, maybe I won't plant these in there. Maybe I'll leave them out. I think I'm going to leave them out. Little change of plans. So I'm just going to add soil in, just focus on this guy, and I'll keep these other ones in their separate pots. So I'll just pot them back up. It's not a problem. I like to use my pencil to poke down soil, just filling any air pockets or air gaps down there. That way the plant just stays stable, just like that. Okay, this is how I bottom water my peperomias. I just grab a little saucer, or the saucer that it's in, and I just fill it up to the top, and I just let that soak through. Let's see, sometimes you can actually see it going like really, really fast. This one's going to take a little bit more time just because it's got some new soil, and sometimes it takes a little while for new soil to absorb water. It can have a little bit of a hydrophobic property to it. So I'm going to let that just sit in that saucer for a little while. The pot and the soil from the drain hole will just kind of soak it up, and it'll take up as much water as it needs. Don't let the top of the soil get wet, because that really defeats the purpose of bottom watering. Just because if you let the top of the soil get wet, it's going to kind of rot away at those fleshy stems. So I would water it just so that it maybe reaches like halfway up the pot, maybe a little bit further. But just let this soak through, just feel the weight of the pot, and just make sure it doesn't get wet on top. Just going to water this ficus inside just to show you how I water these guys. I'll probably take the other one outside. And again, you can see a little bit of that soil just sitting on top. Might take a few waterings for that dry soil to absorb the water in the pot. I'm just going to let this drain through. You want to see it just kind of like drain through the pot. So it might take a few waterings before that actually happens. And give it some more water. This will also help settle the soil so that the plant remains a little bit more stable in the pot. I'll keep watering it till it comes out the bottom of the drain hole. You can see it's starting to slowly, you can see it's draining down pretty good now. So I'm going to let this drain through until it comes out the bottom of the drain hole. But otherwise, I think that's going to be pretty much it for this video. If you have any comments or questions, please leave it down below in the comment section. Otherwise, thanks again for watching my videos. I appreciate the support. Take care, everyone. Bye.